welcome back. Tonight, we're drifting slowly into the ancient dark between stars, into a civilization so old it remembers when humanity was nothing more than trembling creatures crouching near fire, peering up at the sky and wondering what watched them from the black. We are entering the world of the Yautja, a species forged not by comfort, not by mercy, but by the long and patient art of the hunt. They crossed the void of space before our ancestors learned to sow grain. They built temples on distant worlds, collected skulls as scripture, and developed a code of honor so precise and so ruthless that entire centuries of their culture hinge on a single question: does this prey deserve to die well? Tonight, we will walk the full arc of that civilization, from its origins in blood and conquest, through the sacred philosophy of the hunt, through the biology of creatures that were never meant to lose, through their encounters with the one species that repeatedly surprised them, and into the long shadow they cast over every dark jungle, every burning city, every cold corridor of deep space where something unseen is watching, waiting, already choosing. If you leave before the end, you will miss what they found at the edge of the universe that changed them. You will miss why humanity, of all the creatures in the cosmos, became something the Yautja could not entirely dismiss. Before we begin, feel free to like and subscribe, but only if you enjoy this kind of slow, immersive storytelling that unfolds like a dream. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always a quiet wonder to see the same story weaving through different corners of the world, one hushed night at a time. There is a planet at the edge of what humans would eventually call known space, in a system whose star burns slightly cooler than our own sun, casting everything below it in a dim, amber light that lingers at the edge of dusk, even at midday. It is a world of high gravity, dense atmosphere, thick canopied forests where the trees grow with the slow, armored permanence of things that have survived every extinction their world has offered. The ground is hard, the prey is dangerous, the predators are many. This is Yautja Prime, though the species who evolved here did not always call it that. The name itself is a later designation, an identity they gave their homeworld only after they had left it, only after they had seen enough of the universe to understand that their origin world was not the whole of existence, only its beginning. What we know of Yautja early history is fragmented. The species itself does not maintain history the way humanity does, not in written chronicles, not in preserved architecture, not in the careful maintenance of the past for its own sake. The Yautja record their history in trophies, in scars, in the ritual recounting of hunts passed down through clans like liturgy. What they remember in the body. What they choose to forget, they let rot. What can be pieced together from the evidence they left on other worlds, from the ancient carvings found in temples that predate human civilization by tens of thousands of years, from the testimonies of those rare individuals who survived long enough to observe Yautja culture from a position of something approaching intimacy, is this: the Yautja were not always the dominant species on their homeworld. They evolved alongside creatures of immense size and ferocity, megafauna that would have made Earth's most formidable predators seem modest by comparison. In this environment, intelligence alone was not enough. Speed alone was not enough. The Yautja evolved something rarer and more dangerous than either of those things. They evolved the capacity to plan, not simply to react, not simply to flee or strike, but to observe, to understand, to anticipate, to set a trap days before it would be sprung, to carry a strategy in the mind like a stone carried in the hand, turning it over and over until its weight was familiar and its use was certain. This was the evolutionary gift that separated the Yautja from everything else that lived and died on their homeworld, and it was a gift shaped entirely by necessity. You developed that kind of intelligence, or you died. Most things died. The Yautja grew tall. The average adult reaches somewhere between 7 and 8 feet in height, though exceptional specimens have been recorded considerably larger. Their bodies are dense with muscle that operates differently from human muscle. It contracts harder, recovers faster, and sustains damage that would be incapacitating or fatal to a human body without the same degree of functional impairment. Their skeletal structure is reinforced to a degree that makes bones difficult to break under anything but extraordinary force. Their skin is thick, mottled, and bears a texture that has been described variously as reptilian or amphibian in quality. Though they are neither, they are their own category of creature entirely. Their faces are their most immediately striking feature, and deliberately so. The mandibles, 4 flexible, chitinous appendages arranged around a central mouth, are used for communication, for display, for threat assessment, and for eating. When a Yautja is calm, the mandibles rest. When agitated or excited, they extend and clatter and spread in patterns that carry specific meaning within their social language. The eyes are small and deep-set, capable of perceiving a range of spectrums that human vision cannot access. They see in infrared as naturally as they see in visible light, a capacity shaped by the need to track warm-blooded prey through dense foliage at night. They also possess the ability to shift their perception into what might be described as an electromagnetic spectrum, useful for detecting technology, for reading the heat signature of fear in a creature that does not yet know it is being watched. Their hearing is acute. Their sense of smell is built into a complex organ structure that processes chemical information in ways that go beyond what simple olfaction suggests. They can detect the specific chemistry of stress hormones, of adrenaline, of the faint biological difference between a creature that is afraid and one that is merely cautious. They can, in essence, smell the difference between prey that has given up and prey that is still thinking. This last capacity matters more than it might seem. It matters because of the code. The consequences of this biology, shaped over hundreds of thousands of years on a world that never offered comfort, rippled forward into everything the Yautja became. Every technology they built, every ritual they developed, every relationship they formed with the concept of death. Before the Yautja ever left their homeworld, before they built the first ship that carried them into open space, before they encountered any species other than their own, they had developed what might loosely be called a philosophy. It was not a philosophy in the human sense, not a set of abstract principles to be argued over in courts or academies. It was a code of conduct so deeply woven into the social fabric of Yautja life that violating it was not merely a transgression, but an identity. To break the code was not to make a mistake. It was to become something else, something lesser. The central premise of Yautja culture is this: life has value in proportion to the difficulty of its ending. A creature that dies easily is not worth hunting. A creature that fights, that adapts, that surprises the hunter, that costs the hunter something, pain, effort, ingenuity, blood. That creature, by dying, confers honor. The greater the prey, the greater the achievement. The greater the achievement, the greater the hunter's standing. This premise sounds simple. It is not simple. The implications of it stretch across every dimension of Yautja existence. Consider what it means for the hunt itself. The Yautja do not hunt in the way a human might imagine. sneaking through undergrowth, striking at the weakest member of a herd, taking the easiest kill available. That would be efficient, certainly. But efficiency is not the point. The point is the encounter. The Yautja actively seeks prey that poses a genuine threat. They seek creatures that can fight back, that can wound the hunter, that carry within them the real possibility of killing the Yautja before the Yautja kills them. A hunt that carries no mortal risk is not considered a hunt at all. It is considered practice at best and an embarrassment at worst. This is why the Yautja, when they finally encountered other spacefaring civilizations, were not primarily interested in conquest. Conquest is not interesting to them. A conquered enemy, stripped of resources, incapable of meaningful resistance, subjugated and diminished, is no longer worthy prey. Domination, in the human sense, would eliminate the very thing that makes the Yautja's existence meaningful. They did not seek to rule the galaxy. They sought to hunt it. The code also governs whom the Yautja will hunt and whom they will not. This distinction is crucial and often misunderstood. The Yautja do not hunt the unarmed. They do not hunt children. They do not hunt the elderly or the sick or the clearly incapacitated. These are not acts of mercy in any human sentimental sense. The Yautja do not feel mercy the way humans do. It is rather a matter of worth. To kill something that cannot defend itself is beneath the code. It does not honor the prey. It does not test the hunter. It is the act of something that does not understand what killing is for. This distinction has, on more than one occasion, saved a human life in circumstances where no other logic would have done so. The code also governs the treatment of wounds and trophies. A Yautja who has been injured during a hunt does not consider this a failure. The wound, in fact, is evidence of the hunt's quality. Scars are worn as decoration, as biography, as social credential. A Yautja covered in old scars is not a Yautja who has been defeated. It is a Yautja who has hunted the most dangerous prey available and survived. The scars say, "I was here, in the place where things could have gone differently, and I endured." Trophies taken from a kill, most famously the skull stripped of flesh and preserved, are not simply souvenirs. They are a record. Each skull is a specific claim. I faced this. I won. The trophy collection of an elder Yautja is a library of encounters, of dangers survived, of great prey honored in the way the code demands. To lose one's trophies is a profound humiliation. To have one's trophies taken by prey, to have the skull collector become the one whose skull is collected, is the highest possible honor that can be bestowed upon a prey species. Very few species have ever achieved that particular distinction. Humanity is among them. The code was not written down. It did not need to be. It was transmitted through the clan structure, through the ritual of the first hunt, through the long apprenticeship of young Yautja, observing elder Yautja, through the stories told in the way that Yautja tell stories, not in words so much as in the arrangement of trophies, the display of scars, the specific clatter of mandibles that carries meaning no human translation has ever fully captured. What it created was a species with an absolute moral system built entirely around the act of hunting. And this system, this quiet, ruthless, beautifully precise philosophy, was the thing that carried them out into the stars. This act, born from the pressure of a dangerous world and refined across millennia into something approaching religion, set the stage for everything that followed. There is a tendency, when examining the Yautja's technology, to focus on the weapons. This is understandable. The weapons are remarkable. But it misses something essential. about how the Yautja relate to their technology, which is not the way a soldier relates to equipment, and not the way a hunter relates to tools, but something closer to the way an artist relates to instruments. Each piece of Yautja technology is, in its own way, an expression of the code. Each weapon, each piece of armor, each device carried into the hunt reflects a specific philosophy about what the hunt should be, what it should cost, what it should require, what it should feel like to stand in the presence of something that might kill you and to choose to remain. The most iconic piece of Yautja technology is not a weapon at all. It is the cloaking device, the shimmer, as some human observers have described it, the barely visible distortion that moves through the air where the Yautja stands, a ripple in visual reality that the eye catches only when it already knows what to look for. The cloaking technology bends light around the body of the wearer, rendering them functionally invisible to most forms of visual perception. It is not perfect. It struggles with water, with extreme thermal variation, with the particular optical properties of dense rain. But in most conditions, in most environments, it is enough to make the Yautja into something felt before it is seen. The cloaking device is often misread as the tool of a coward, something used to hunt from ambush, to take prey without risk. This interpretation reflects a misunderstanding of Yautja purpose. The cloak is not used to eliminate danger from the hunt. The Yautja, who stands invisible in the trees above a sleeping camp, is not there because they are afraid. They are there because they are watching, assessing. The cloak allows the hunter to observe the prey in its natural behavior, to understand its habits, its patterns, its relationships, its capacity for resistance. It is the preliminary act of the hunt, not the hunt itself. When the Yautja has decided that the prey is worthy, when it has determined that this will be a genuine contest, the cloak often comes off. There is something almost ceremonial about that moment. The visible hunter, the acknowledgement. The prey now knows what hunts it. The plasma caster, the shoulder-mounted energy weapon that has become the most recognizable element of Yautja combat imagery, is a precisely calibrated tool. The energy bolts it fires are not simply destructive. They are graduated. A Yautja can adjust the yield, the spread, the intensity, choosing between a shot that kills cleanly and a shot that wounds deliberately, that removes a limb but leaves the prey capable of retreat and resistance for a while longer. This capacity for restraint in a weapon designed to kill says something significant about the Yautja relationship to death. They are not interested in the fastest possible ending. They are interested in the most complete one. The kind of ending that uses everything the prey has to offer. The wrist blades, retractable blades mounted on a gauntlet that extend with a mechanical hiss to a length that varies by wearer preference and task, are the most intimate of the Yautja weapons. They are used when the Yautja wants to be close, when proximity is the point, when the hunt has reached its culmination and the hunter chooses to finish it at a distance where the outcome is uncertain for both parties. Many humans who have survived encounters with Yautja hunters note that the use of wrist blades rather than ranged weaponry felt different, more personal, more deliberate, something that communicated a specific intention. That intention was, roughly, "You are worth this." The smart disc is a thrown weapon of extraordinary lethality, a sharpened discus-like object guided by a combination of the thrower's manual control and an internal tracking mechanism that allows it to alter its trajectory in flight. It returns to the thrower after completing its arc, unless it lodges in something difficult to dislodge it from. The disc is a weapon of open spaces and decisive moments. capable of removing limbs or heads with a single pass if deployed correctly. The combi stick, a collapsible staff weapon that extends to a length suited to the Yautja's considerable height, is used in close quarters and in situations where the hunter wants a weapon that requires skill and proximity in equal measure. It is not the weapon of choice when the goal is to end things quickly. It is the weapon of choice when the goal is to demonstrate something. The net launcher, by contrast, is a weapon of control rather than killing. Its mesh capable of constricting and cutting through flesh under tension, used to immobilize dangerous prey or to create the specific disadvantage that makes a final confrontation more even. The nets are not used on prey the Yautja considers beneath them. They are reserved for prey that requires managing. The armor itself, the distinctive combination of biohelmet, chest plate, and layered protective plating, is not purely defensive in function. The helmet is the most complex piece of Yautja equipment, serving as a multi-spectrum visual interface, a communication device, a translator of increasing sophistication as the Yautja accumulates encounters with new species and adds to its linguistic database, a medical scanner and a recording device. Yautja document their hunts through the helmet's internal systems, and these recordings are reviewed by clan elders, used in the instruction of younger hunters, and archived as part of the clan's collective memory. The self-destruct device carried on the wrist gauntlet, capable of generating a nuclear-level explosion within a given radius, is the most philosophically loaded piece of technology the Yautja carries. It is not primarily a weapon. It is a statement. It says, if I am to be taken, if this hunt ends with my defeat rather than my victory, I will not be taken as a trophy by something I failed to kill. I will not diminish my clan by surviving in captivity. The destruction is the exit. The exit is honorable. It is the final refusal of the code to permit diminishment. Every human who has ever seen a defeated Yautja reach for that device has understood something in that moment that no briefing could have conveyed. The quality of the refusal, the completeness of it. This understanding of the arsenal as an expression of philosophy, rather than simply as a collection of lethal tools, altered the course of every encounter that followed. The Yautja do not have nations. They do not have governments in any conventional sense. No centralized political authority, no bureaucracy, no democratic institution or monarchy in the human understanding of those structures. What they have and have always had are clans. The clan is the fundamental unit of Yautja social existence. It is the group into which a Yautja is born, through which it learns the code, within which it advances or fails, and in relation to which its identity is entirely defined. There is no meaningful Yautja self outside the clan. The clan is not simply a family or a tribe in the human sense. It is something closer to a civilization in miniature, with its own traditions, its own hunting grounds, including specific planets claimed across multiple star systems, its own hierarchy, and its own slightly distinct interpretation of the code, though the core principles are universal. Within the clan, status is determined entirely by hunting achievement. There is no inherited status that survives a failure to perform. A Yautja born to high-status parents begins with the benefit of better training, better equipment, and greater expectation. But if that Yautja fails in the hunt, those advantages mean nothing. The hierarchy is perpetually earned. It is never simply held. Young Yautja, called youngbloods, occupy the lowest rung of the clan hierarchy. They have not yet completed a significant hunt. They have not proven themselves. They are given basic training, basic equipment, and observed carefully by elders who are, in a way, making a continuous investment assessment. A young blood who shows promise receives more attention. One who shows no promise is not eliminated. The code does not permit killing within the clan without cause. But they are, in the way of all societies, quietly disadvantaged. The first hunt is the defining transition of a Yautja's life, the rite of passage. It is not a symbolic thing, not a ceremony that can be passed by performing the right gestures and saying the right words. It is a real hunt against real prey in a genuinely dangerous environment. A young blood who dies on their first hunt dies as a young blood, and that death is mourned appropriately, but without particular ceremony. A young blood who completes the first hunt successfully returns transformed. The name changes. The standing changes. Everything that follows is shaped by that first moment of proof. The ranking system that follows, from blooded hunter to the various gradations of experienced hunter to the honored elder, is not bureaucratic. It does not involve formal promotion or the awarding of titles by committee. It is observed. The clan watches its hunters. It knows who has taken which prey, under what conditions, at what cost to themselves. The hierarchy self-assembles from the accumulation of witnessed and documented achievement. Everyone in the clan knows who has earned what. Pretension is not possible in a society where the record is carried in scars and skulls. Elders hold particular authority within the clan for reasons beyond simple seniority. An elder Yautja has survived a hunting career long enough to reach advanced age in a culture where dying young in the hunt is common and considered appropriate. This means the elder has been extraordinarily good, consistently, over a very long period. An elder's counsel is valued not because of their age, but because their age is itself evidence. Every year of an elder's life is a year in which they could have died and chose not to. That choice, made continuously, is the credential. The relationship between clans is complex. Different clans compete for the best hunting territories. And the best hunting territories are defined not by geography, but by the quality of the prey they contain. A planet where the native fauna is genuinely dangerous, or where a settlement of a resistant, intelligent species has taken root, is a valuable territory. Clans negotiate for these territories, dispute them, sometimes come into conflict over them. Though all-out war between clans violates the code's prohibition on wasting the capacity for hunting on those who already understand the hunt. The disputes tend toward ritualized confrontation rather than open warfare. There are also what might be described as bad blood Yautja, hunters who have violated the code in ways severe enough to be cast out of their clan entirely. These individuals are a particular category of threat. They retain all the capabilities of a Yautja hunter, but operate outside the code, which means they hunt without the restrictions the code imposes. An unhinged Yautja, one no longer bound by the prohibition on hunting unarmed prey, by the requirement for fair contest, by the laws against hunting within the species. Such a creature is feared even by other Yautja. The bad blood is not simply a rogue. They are what the code was designed to prevent. A Yautja who kills for no reason other than that they can. The social world of the Yautja is, in this way, a precise and functional solution to the problem of housing enormous physical capability inside a social structure. The code turns the hunter's drive outward, toward appropriate prey and away from the species itself. The clan provides identity and belonging. The hierarchy provides aspiration and restraint. Without any one of these elements, the Yautja would be something far more purely destructive. This structure, ancient and stable, is what carried the Yautja into the cosmos. and into the attention of every intelligent species, unfortunate or honored enough to catch their eye. They were here long before anyone could record their presence. Long before the cities, long before the civilizations, long before the first human hand pressed itself into wet clay and left a shape that someone else could find and read. The Yautja discovered Earth, or rather, acknowledged Earth as a planet of sufficient interest. At a point in the planet's history when the most complex life on its surface was still navigating the transition between nomadic wandering and settled society. By the standards of other species the Yautja had encountered, humanity at this stage was primitive, small, soft, loud, but they were interesting. The specific quality that drew Yautja attention to early humans is debated among those who have studied the encounters that followed. But the most compelling theory is this: humans, unlike most prey species, the Yautja had observed at a comparable stage of development, displayed a disturbing capacity for adaptation under pressure. Most prey species, when confronted with a genuinely superior predator, responded in one of several predictable ways: flight, herd behavior, concealment, surrender. Humans, even in those earliest encounters, responded with something different. They observed, they thought, they improvised, and occasionally, against all probability, they caused the Yautja hunter genuine difficulty. This caught the Yautja's attention in the most fundamental way possible. It registered as a quality worth noting. The earliest confirmed evidence of Yautja presence on Earth is found in the ancient record in ways that are easy to misread. The great pyramidal structures found across multiple unconnected ancient civilizations in Egypt, in Central America, in Southeast Asia, in structures now lost beneath centuries of jungle or sand, share specific architectural characteristics that have puzzled historians for generations. The alignment with celestial bodies, the precision of construction that appears to exceed what the available technology should have permitted, the iconography of gods who descend from the sky, who bear weapons of terrible power, who judge humanity and take from it the strongest and most exceptional individuals. These are not coincidences. They are records, imperfect records, filtered through the mythological frameworks of cultures that had no other language to describe what they had witnessed, but records nonetheless. The Yautja used these ancient human cultures, used the labor of early civilizations, in some accounts actively guided and assisted the development of those civilizations, for a specific purpose. They were constructing hunting grounds. The pyramid structures in particular served as temples in the most literal possible sense. Temples of the hunt, built to house and facilitate the most sacred act of Yautja ritual. These structures were designed to contain a specific kind of hunting experience, involving a specific and extraordinarily dangerous prey, the xenomorph. The relationship between the Yautja and the xenomorph is the central enigma of Yautja culture, and it deserves its own careful examination. But it begins here, in these ancient structures, with humans who built what they were instructed to build, who worshipped the sky gods who directed them, and who were used knowingly, unknowingly, willingly, unwillingly, in a ritual that their sky gods had practiced on hundreds of worlds before finding this one. Every 100 years, give or take a cultural variation in the counting, the Yautja returned to Earth, young hunters, blooded warriors seeking their first great prey, and they would come to these ancient places where the ritual was prepared, where what needed to be released was released, and the hunt would begin. The humans who lived near these places knew, in the way that people know things they cannot fully articulate, that something happened there, something that had been happening before their grandparents' were born, something that would continue happening long after their own names were forgotten. They built their temples around it. They wove it into their creation myths. They called the participants gods and demons and gave them names in every human language that meant roughly the same thing. The ones who come from above, the ones who hunt, the ones who judge. These earliest encounters established a pattern that would continue in various forms for millennia, and the weight of that pattern pressed itself into the DNA of human mythology in ways that shaped how human beings thought about the sky, about gods, about judgment, about the possibility of being watched and found worthy or unworthy, long after anyone remembered why those ideas had first taken root. Part 6. The Xenomorph. The perfect prey and the terrible risk. No account of the Yautja is complete without a reckoning with the creature they chose, above all others, as the apex of the hunt, the creature that gave their ritual its highest expression of danger, the creature that they called, in the closest translation available, the hard meat. The species that humans would eventually name xenomorph. What the xenomorph is, at its core, is this: a biological weapon that became an ecosystem, a creature engineered by whom and how long ago, and for what original purpose is itself a matter of deep and unresolved speculation. To be the most efficient killing machine that organic matter could be shaped into. It is not intelligent in the way the Yautja are intelligent. It does not plan in the way the Yautja plan, but it adapts with a terrifying speed. It coordinates within a hive with a precision that resembles strategic thinking, and it is nearly impossible to kill cleanly without the kind of tools the Yautja carry. The xenomorph life cycle is itself an act of predation. It begins with an egg, a leathery, organic container that holds the facehugger in a state of patient stasis. The facehugger, upon detecting a host organism of sufficient size, attaches to the face, forces an ovipositor through the throat, and deposits an embryo. The host survives this process, regains consciousness, and feels, for a period of hours or days, almost normal. Then the embryo gestates, and then, in the manner that has haunted the imagination of every species that has ever witnessed it, it does not wait to be born in the conventional sense. The resulting chest burster, small, fast, and already dangerous within moments of emerging, grows to full adult size within a matter of hours, consuming organic material at a remarkable rate, shedding its initial form for the elongated, carapaced, biomechanically complex adult form that can reach upwards of 7 feet in length, operates on 6 limbs with a secondary set of inner jaws capable of punching through cranial bone, secretes highly corrosive acid as blood, sees impartial electromagnetic spectrum, and navigates dark environments through a combination of sensory capabilities that make concealment extremely difficult. The queen is the hive's organizing principle, an entity of extraordinary size, capable of generating eggs continuously, directing the drones through a pheromonal and possibly neurological communication network that functions like a distributed intelligence. The drones, the warriors of the hive, are not simply aggressive animals. They are tactically coordinated. They exploit cover. They identify and target threats efficiently. They can distinguish between a direct threat and a non-threat in ways that suggest something beyond simple instinct, though the exact mechanism of their apparent intelligence remains poorly understood. For the Yautja, this creature is the pinnacle. To hunt a xenomorph solo, to track it through whatever environment it has colonized, to face it in close quarters and emerge with the skull. This is the hunt that defines a career. This is the achievement that makes an elder. Young hunters who take xenomorph prey for the first time undergo an immediate and irreversible change in status within their clan. The danger is absolute, and the proof is undeniable. But the relationship between Yautja and xenomorph is not simply that of hunter and ideal prey. It is something more uncomfortable than that. The Yautja need the xenomorph, need the eggs, need the facehuggers, need the hosts, need the creatures to be present in sufficient numbers to constitute a genuine hunt rather than a single isolated encounter. This need has led the Yautja into a practice that the code, in its strictest interpretation, does not entirely sanction: the deliberate seeding of xenomorph populations on worlds chosen for hunting, bringing the eggs, releasing them, waiting for the infestation to establish itself, and then hunting it. The hosts, in the ancient Earth context, were often human. The humans who built the temples or lived near them, or were brought there for purposes they did not fully understand. They were the vessels through which the xenomorphs were introduced. This is the darkest dimension of the Yautja's ancient relationship with humanity, the reverence and the violence existing in the same space. The god who requires sacrifice in the most literal possible sense. And here is the complication that the code does not entirely resolve. If a xenomorph escapes the hunting ground, if it spreads beyond the contained environment of the ritual, it represents a catastrophic threat to the very world the Yautja has been using. There are accounts, fragmentary, disputed, but persistent, of Yautja hunters abandoning their hunt to prevent a xenomorph outbreak from consuming an entire planet's population. Not out of mercy, but because a world consumed by xenomorphs is no longer a world worth hunting. The prey is gone. The ground is poisoned. In this way, the Yautja became, by accident of practical necessity, something occasional and reluctant protectors of the civilizations they used. Their care for humanity was never tender, but it was, in its way, real. What followed from this strange, violent, mutually exploitative relationship was an entanglement that neither species ever fully chose, and neither species could ever entirely escape. The hunts that the Yautja conducted on Earth across recorded and unrecorded history were not random. They followed patterns. The jungle environments of Central America and Southeast Asia, the equatorial zones where heat and density of life created conditions closest to those on the Yautja's own homeworld, were preferred territories for generations. The prey was most plentiful there. The environment was most challenging. But as humanity developed, as the settlements grew larger, as the weapons improved, as the groups of humans in these regions organized themselves into more sophisticated social units capable of more coordinated resistance, the nature of the hunt changed. The development of human military capability in the 20th century represented something genuinely new in the Yautja's experience of Earth as a hunting ground. The species that had once been remarkable for improvising with stone and fire now carried machines capable of sustained ranged fire at rates and volumes that even a Yautja's considerable durability could not simply absorb. The helicopters and the infrared sensors and the automatic weapons, none of these individually constituted a serious threat to a prepared Yautja hunter. But they changed the ecology of the hunt in ways that some hunters found increasingly interesting. The encounters that generated the most detailed human record, the rare occasions when a Yautja hunt went wrong enough that humans survived with coherent testimony about what had occurred, share certain characteristics. The Yautja in these accounts is not simply a predator operating on instinct. It is something more deliberate than that. It observes first. It selects. It demonstrates patience to a degree that human witnesses found deeply unsettling. The knowledge that something was watching them for extended periods before deciding to act, cataloging their capabilities, assessing their worth, making a decision about what they deserved. The notable feature of multiple recorded accounts is the moment of recognition, the point at which the Yautja hunter encountered a human who exceeded its expectations, a human who, in the specific language of the code, proved worthy. In these moments, the hunt shifted. The Yautja did not simply kill and collect. The encounter became something else, something that the code had language for, even if human language struggled with it. A contest, an acknowledgement, an act of respect conducted through violence. In what may be the most documented of these encounters, a Yautja who had spent an extended period hunting military personnel in a Central American jungle encountered a small group of soldiers whose collective resistance substantially exceeded every previous encounter in that engagement. One soldier, in particular, demonstrated the specific combination of physical capability, adaptive intelligence, and absolute refusal to give up that the code identified as the highest form of prey. When this soldier finally faced the Yautja directly, without weapons, covered in mud, which disrupted the Yautja's thermal vision, a piece of improvised adaptation that the hunter had not encountered before, the encounter that followed was not a hunt any longer. It was a duel. The Yautja removed its mask for that encounter, removed its advantage, engaged with what it had found, this mud-covered, exhausted, improvising human creature, as something approaching an equal. The human won through ingenuity and circumstance. The Yautja, dying, laughed. That laugh is perhaps the most important detail in the entire account. Not a laugh of despair, not a laugh of madness, not a laugh of anything that a defeated creature should logically express. A laugh of satisfaction, of recognition, of a hunt that had ended exactly as the code required a great hunt to end, in genuine uncertainty, genuine contest, genuine cost to both parties. The Yautja died well. By its own code, it died as well as a Yautja can die. And the human who killed it earned something that no medal or commendation could have expressed. He earned the acknowledgement of the code. The city hunts that followed, the accounts of Yautja operating not in jungle environments, but in dense urban landscapes, in the vertically complex environments of modern metropolitan areas, represented another evolution of the hunt. The city offered different challenges, more hiding places, more variables, more humans in close proximity, creating a constant noise of thermal signatures and movement that made tracking more difficult and selection more deliberate. The urban Yautja hunts are distinguished by their selectivity. The code's prohibition on hunting the unarmed operated with particular visibility in urban environments. Entire blocks of a city could be effectively invisible to a Yautja hunter who had assessed their occupants and found no one worth engaging. The hunt moved through populated areas like a thread through fabric, touching only what the code permitted it to touch, leaving everything else intact. Not intact out of mercy, intact because it was not worthy. The distinction matters. In the city accounts, a recurring element is the Yautja's adaptation of its strategy when the prey proved unexpectedly capable. A hunter who was outmaneuvered, who lost an advantage, who had to improvise. These moments were not recorded as failures by those who witnessed them closely enough. They were recorded as what they were, a hunter at the highest level of its craft, operating at the edge of its capability, genuinely invested in an outcome that was not certain. These encounters left their traces in the humans who survived them. Not wounds only, not trauma only, but something harder to name. A shift in how those individuals understood the universe, The knowledge that something out there had looked at them, truly looked, and found them interesting. This knowledge, once acquired, tends to be permanent. Not all Yautja followed the same path. Not all clans maintained the same relationship to the code. And in the long history of the species, as they spread across dozens of star systems and encountered the full breadth of what the universe offered as prey, a divergence emerged, quiet at first, then increasingly difficult to ignore. There are Yautja who are larger, faster, stronger by margins that exceed simple individual variation. Their technology is more advanced in ways that suggest a different developmental lineage, a parallel refinement pursued in isolation from the mainstream of Yautja culture. They hunt differently. Their targets are not simply the most dangerous available prey in a given environment. They hunt the Yautja themselves. These are the ones sometimes called super predators or berserkers by human observers, though those names carry connotations that partially miss the point. They are not berserk, they are not disordered. They are, if anything, operating with a disturbing precision and a clear internal logic. The logic is simply not the same logic that the code represents. Where the traditional Yautja code says that the prey must be worthy, must carry the possibility of winning, must be genuine in its capacity for resistance, the super predator's logic appears to say something different. It says, I hunt the best hunters. I prove my superiority not by measuring myself against dangerous prey in the wild, but by measuring myself against those who have already proven themselves against dangerous prey in the wild. I take the trophy of the trophy taker. It is, in its own cold way, internally consistent. To hunt a Yautja who has hunted xenomorphs is to hunt the peak of the peak. If the code's underlying purpose is to identify the greatest hunter, to perpetually refine the species toward the sharpest possible expression of its hunting capability, then hunting other hunters is the purest possible expression of that ambition. The traditional Yautja consider this interpretation a fundamental violation, not because the super predators are wrong about the logic is there, but because it collapses the distinction between hunter and prey within the species. It makes the hunt turn inward. It breaks the outward direction of the code's violence, which was the code's primary function as a social mechanism. The relationship between the two factions is one of mutual contempt expressed through the only language both sides fully share: combat. Super predators capture traditional hunters, bring them to their own hunting reserves, and hunt them. Traditional Yautja, when they encounter super predators, treat the confrontation as a sacred obligation, not a hunt in the code's terms, because the super predator understands the code and has rejected it, but something closer to execution. Among the human accounts that document the super predator variant, one involves a group of individuals from various backgrounds who found themselves transplanted to an alien world, a planet specifically engineered as a hunting reserve, with a controlled environment and imported prey species. Among the prey was at least one traditional Yautja hunter, also captive. The temporary and deeply pragmatic alliance between that traditional Yautja and the humans. It had every other reason to hunt, reflects something the code contains, but rarely expresses openly. The enemy of the code is a greater threat than the worthy prey. The super predator represents the nightmare version of what the Yautja could become without the restraints the code provides. A hunter of hunters, turning the species' gifts entirely inward, feeding on its own excellence. It is the corruption that innocence, pushed hard enough in one direction, eventually unravels into. The existence of this faction suggests something important about the code. It is not inevitable. It is a choice, made again and again by every generation of Yautja to direct the hunt outward. The code is not biology. It is culture, and culture can fail. This fracture in the ancient order set consequences in motion that are still, in the longest view of Yautja history, not fully resolved. The Yautja are not static. They are a species that has, over the long course of their history, engaged in various forms of biological self-modification, not in the systematic way of a civilization committed to medical advancement, but in the more particular way of hunters who understand that the body is also a tool, and that tools can be sharpened. The most extreme and most documented form of this biological engagement involves the xenomorph directly. There are Yautja who have, through processes that are not fully understood by outside observers, incorporated xenomorph biological elements into their own bodies. Enhanced density, altered pain response, accelerated regeneration. The acid-resistant properties that make xenomorph biology so difficult to harm, applied, in modified form, to the Yautja's own tissue. This practice is controversial, even within Yautja culture. The code's relationship to self-modification is complex. There is nothing that explicitly prohibits it, but there is a philosophical tension between augmenting oneself through the biological essence of one's most valued prey, and the code's fundamental respect for the integrity of that prey. If you make yourself more xenomorph-like, what exactly have you taken, and what does that taking mean? The hybrid variants, Yautja, who have undergone these modifications successfully, are exceptional combatants. Their already considerable capabilities amplified beyond the normal range. They are also, in most accounts, somewhat changed in ways that go beyond the physical. The integration of xenomorph biology appears to carry with it something of the xenomorph's nature, a sharpening of the predatory instinct that reduces, in varying degrees, the capacity for the kind of reflective pause that the code's more philosophical dimensions require. They become more dangerous. They become less wise. These are not always the same direction. There is also documented evidence of reproductive interaction between Yautja and xenomorph biology, specifically cases where a facehugger has attached to a Yautja host, producing an offspring that combines characteristics of both species. The predalien, as human observers have termed it, is not a creature that either parent species regards with anything other than a specific kind of horror. It is the code violated at the biological level, the boundary between hunter and prey, dissolved at the level of cellular material. These hybrids are not born with a code. They are not born with the Yautja's social framework or the xenomorph's hive loyalty. They are born with the capabilities of both and the restraints of neither, and they tend to be eliminated by any Yautja who encounters them, not out of revulsion, but out of necessity. A predalien allowed to survive and integrate into a xenomorph hive creates a hive of exceptional capability and exceptional aggression, a hunting ground that has outgrown its purpose and becomes simply a catastrophe. The biological experiments and modifications that hover at the edge of Yautja culture, tolerated in some clans, forbidden in others, practiced quietly by individuals who believe the code's purpose is served by making themselves better regardless of the method, represent the species at one of its most ambiguous moments. The line between improving the hunter and corrupting the hunt is not always visible until it has been crossed. What followed from these ambitions would not always be within the hunter's power to control. The question of female Yautja is one that human observers have rarely encountered directly, and the accounts that exist are fragmentary and occasionally contradictory. What can be said with reasonable confidence is this: female Yautja are rare in the human record of encounters. but not because they are rare in their own culture. The most widely held interpretation, drawn from the available evidence, is that female Yautja are significantly larger than males, not universally, but on average and at the extremes. The largest Yautja in documented encounters have been, in the analyses that survived, female. This is consistent with a number of biological patterns in highly competitive species, where reproductive selection operates towards size in one sex over the other. Female Yautja hunt. This is not in question. The code does not carry a gender distinction in its application. The hunt is the hunt, and both sexes are measured by the same standard. The relative scarcity of female Yautja in human encounter accounts is more likely explained by the distribution of hunting assignments than by any incapacity. The clans send their hunters according to a logic that involves status, assignment, and the specific nature of the territory being worked. Female Yautja who have reached high status tend to be given the most demanding assignments, which may take them away from the territories where human encounters are most common. Or it may simply be that a female Yautja, hunting at the height of her capability, is substantially less likely to make a mistake that results in a human witness surviving to give testimony. The social role of female Yautja within the clan extends beyond hunting to the transmission of knowledge and code. The specific teaching function that shapes young hunters belongs, in many clans, primarily to experienced females whose combination of hunting achievement and longevity makes them the most appropriate vessels of accumulated wisdom. The elders who hold greatest authority within a clan are, in a number of documented clan structures, female. What we know of the reproductive choices of female Yautja suggests a system in which mate selection is primarily driven by hunting achievement, the higher status female choosing mates based on demonstrated hunting excellence. This is not romantic selection in any human sense. It is selection for capability. The resulting offspring are selected for excellence from before they are born, in the most fundamental biological way, and this selection pressure across thousands of generations is part of what has produced the Yautja's extraordinary collective capability. The female Yautja moves through the record like a shadow through a shadow, present in the logic of everything we understand about the species, rarely visible in the moments we have documented. This invisibility is itself a kind of achievement. There is a gesture in the Yautja code that has no direct human equivalent, but that several human individuals have received, and that receiving it changed them permanently in ways they could not always articulate. When a Yautja hunter encounters prey that has fought exceptionally, that has not simply resisted, but has risen to the level that the code recognizes as genuinely honorable, and that prey survives the encounter, there is a protocol. Not a formal one, not a ritual with prescribed steps, but a practice that recurs consistently enough across clan lines and across centuries to constitute something very close to law. The hunter marks the prey. Sometimes this mark is a physical gift, a weapon, a piece of technology, an object from the hunter's own equipment, given to the surviving human as an acknowledgement that they have demonstrated something worth acknowledging. The human who receives a Yautja weapon in these circumstances has been given something that their species has no framework to understand, a trophy given the wrong way around. The hunter has given a trophy to the prey. It is the highest possible expression of respect within the code. Sometimes the mark is literal, a physical marking made to the human's body that carries within Yautja social understanding a specific designation. This individual is known. This individual has been encountered by one of ours and was found remarkable. Other Yautja who later encounter this individual will be aware, if they have the ability to read the mark, that this human occupies a specific category, not prey, not protected, something in between, something the code contains but does not name cleanly, the acknowledged adversary. The humans who receive these marks and live with them for years afterward describe a particular and unusual experience, a sense that they have been changed not just by the violence of what they survived, but by the recognition that followed it, the knowledge that they had been assessed by something with tens of thousands of years of hunting experience, using a moral framework refined across an entire civilization, and found to have passed whatever test that framework applies. It is an uncomfortable thing to find reassuring, and yet most of them do. There is a category of human that the Yautja encounter and release, not because those humans managed to defeat the hunt, but because they were incidentally useful to it. A human who assists in the killing of a xenomorph, who fights alongside a Yautja out of mutual necessity, who demonstrates in that context the specific qualities the code values. Such a human occupies a complicated position. The Yautja does not want to hunt them in that moment. The Yautja may not want to hunt them after it. The code does not have a word for ally exactly, but it has a practice that functions similarly, and it is enacted with the same deliberate precision that the code applies to everything else. The Yautja who leaves a human alive is making a statement. The statement is, you are worth more alive and remembered than dead and collected. For a species that has made a religion of the collected dead, this is a significant thing to say. These interactions, scattered across human history in fragments too strange to be widely believed, constitute a relationship between humanity and the Yautja that is stranger and more textured than simple predator-prey. It is something for which human language has perhaps one approximate word: rivals. Earth is not the only planet the Yautja have used as a hunting ground. It is perhaps the most persistent, returned to across millennia, never entirely abandoned, containing in its human population a prey species that has continued to develop in ways that sustain Yautja interest, where other species' development has plateaued or ceased. But the scope of Yautja hunting operations extends across star systems and species in ways that suggest a civilization that has been spacefaring for considerably longer than any human estimate of the feasibility of interstellar travel would have suggested possible. The technology required to travel between star systems at the speeds and volumes the Yautja operate at is beyond anything humanity has independently developed, and the nature of the ship systems the Yautja use, the specific design of vessels that serve as both transport and hunting lodge, that are armed but not warships, that are personalized to their owners in ways that reflect the same philosophical relationship to tools that the individual weapons reflect, speaks to a species that has been doing this for a very long time. The dedicated hunting worlds, planets seeded with xenomorph populations and used as reserve territories, are distributed across multiple systems. Their location is not widely shared, even within the Yautja culture. They are clan-specific knowledge, guarded carefully, representing significant investment of time and biological material, and the careful management that maintaining a xenomorph infestation at a useful size without allowing it to become an uncontrollable outbreak requires. Managing a xenomorph population for hunting purposes is not simple. The xenomorph's drive to expand is absolute. It will fill whatever environment it is given, consuming available hosts, multiplying its hive, and then when the hosts are gone, entering a state of dormancy that can persist for centuries. Maintaining an infestation at the size that constitutes a genuine hunt without allowing it to consume the entire host population requires exactly the kind of patient, long-term management that the Yautja are uniquely suited to provide. Some of the dedicated hunting worlds show evidence of multiple cycles, layers of biological and architectural history that suggest the same world has been seeded, hunted, allowed to go dormant, and reactivated over cycles spanning thousands of years. These are the oldest and most valued territories in the Yautja's hunting portfolio. Worlds with a history. Worlds that have been hunted so many times that every corner of them carries the memory of previous encounters in the physical structure of the place. The Yautja relationship to these worlds is not ownership in the human legal sense. It is something closer to stewardship, or perhaps more accurately, to the relationship a cathedral has with its congregation. The place itself has accumulated meaning through what has happened in it. The Yautja return not simply because it is convenient, but because it is proper. Antarctica on Earth is one such site. Beneath the ice, structures that predate every human civilization sit in a preserved stillness, waiting for the cycle to turn again. The humans who discovered them in the 20th century found not just architecture, but a living system, still operational, still capable of fulfilling the function it was designed for. The discovery ended with most of the discoverers dead, and one survivor carrying a mark she had not asked for and could not explain. She went home. She lived her life. She was marked, and she endured. And whatever record the Yautja keep of such things, she is in it. Across the worlds the Yautja have visited and worked. They have left things behind, not intentionally in most cases. The Yautja are careful about their equipment and meticulous about retrieval. But in moments of haste, of emergency, of catastrophic failure, pieces of Yautja technology have remained in environments they were not designed for, and the species that later found them faced a particular and dangerous kind of inheritance. The weapons that have ended up in human hands over the course of history's documented encounters have been largely non-functional upon recovery, designed with biometric locks and material properties that begin degradation processes upon separation from an authenticated user. This is not accidental. The Yautja do not want their technology studied and replicated. The code's framework for the hunt depends on a specific balance of capability between hunter and prey. If the prey begins to approach the hunter's level of technological sophistication, the hunt becomes something different, and the code does not clearly define what the hunt becomes then. But some fragments have persisted. Some pieces of Yautja technology have been examined, partially understood, and have contributed in ways that are difficult to fully trace in the official record, but are present in it if you know what to look for, to specific human technological developments, materials science, thermal imaging, certain advances in energy-to-matter conversion theory. The fingerprints of Yautja technology are faint in the human scientific record, but they are there. The ships, when they have been briefly examined by human investigators, represent the most significant gap between Yautja and human technological capability. The propulsion systems involved operate on principles that human physics at the time of each examination was not equipped to fully characterize. The internal organization of these vessels, the combination of functional technology and the specific aesthetic choices of the owner, the trophies displayed, the evidence of ritual and personal history visible in the arrangement of the ship's living space, speaks to a culture that does not separate function from meaning in the way that human technology design often does. Everything the Yautja builds, it builds with the code in mind. The ship is not just transport, it is an extension of the hunter. It says, in its design and its history, exactly who the hunter is and what the hunter has been. The medical technology the Yautja carry, the chemical compounds and the devices used to treat wounds in the field, is in some ways the most remarkable of their capabilities to human observers, because it is so apparently inconsistent with everything else about the culture. A species that considers wounds honorable, that collects scars as biography, that constructed its entire value system around the acceptance of physical cost. Why would such a species develop sophisticated field medicine? The answer, when examined through the code, is not actually inconsistent. The Yautja heals from wounds, not because the wound is shameful, but because the hunt must continue. A hunter who dies from a wound taken in an early hunt is a hunter who will never achieve the hunts that follow. The medicine is not about refusing the cost of the hunt. It is about ensuring that the cost can be paid again and again and again. The healing is in service of the continued hunting. This distinction between healing as avoidance and healing as continuation is one of those places where the Yautja worldview, examined closely enough, becomes unexpectedly coherent, even moving. A civilization that heals its wounds, not to deny them, but to earn more of them. What they left behind on the worlds they touched is a partial map of everything they valued, and that map points, always, in the same direction. Step back far enough from the details of any individual hunt, from any specific jungle, any specific city, any specific moment of encounter between a Yautja hunter and a human who found within themselves something they had not previously known, and a pattern becomes visible that no single account contains entirely. The Yautja are a species that has solved a problem that most advanced civilizations encounter and rarely resolve cleanly. What do you do with the drive that made you capable when you no longer need it for survival? Every civilization that achieves enough technological mastery to eliminate the fundamental threats of its environment faces the question of what the old drives are for now. The hunger that drove early humans to pursue prey across frozen tundra. What does it become in a species that can produce food without effort? The aggression that defended early settlements from rival groups. What does it become in a species that has eliminated the rival groups? These drives do not disappear. They displace. They find new objects, and the objects they find are not always better than the originals. The Yautja's answer to this problem is the code. The code takes the drive that might otherwise turn inward, toward consumption, toward internal conflict, toward the slow cultural sickness of a species that has become too powerful for its own restraint to manage, and turns it perpetually outward, toward the most dangerous available prey, toward the genuine test, toward the encounter that costs something, that requires everything, that leaves the hunter either dead or changed. This is not a perfect solution. The super predators represent its most visible failure mode. The bad bloods represent its quieter ones. The exploitation of humanity in ancient times represents the cost that other species paid for the code's maintenance of Yautja coherence. The code is not clean. It is not kind. It requires sacrifice of the prey, and in the best instances, of the hunter too. But it is functional in the deepest sense. It has kept the Yautja a coherent civilization across timescales that have seen dozens of other species rise, flourish, and collapse into silence. The Yautja are still here, still hunting, still carrying their code through the dark between stars, still looking for prey that is worth the effort, still finding, occasionally, that this small planet in this unremarkable system around this dim star produces creatures that surprise them. Humanity is a puzzle to the Yautja, in a way that most species are not. Most species reach a ceiling, a point at which their development stabilizes, their resistance to the hunt plateaus, their capacity for surprise is exhausted. Humanity keeps developing, keeps adapting, keeps producing, in each generation, individuals who carry within them some new version of the quality the code values most, the refusal to accept a predetermined outcome. Every Yautja who has hunted humans and survived the encounter has presumably reported back to their clan something about what was found here. What quality of prey, what unexpected resilience, what capacity for innovation under pressure. And across all those reports, across all those generations, a consensus has presumably formed in the Yautja's collective understanding of Earth and its inhabitants. We do not know what that consensus says exactly, but we know that they keep coming back. That is, in the language of the code, a very specific kind of compliment. Somewhere in the dark above us tonight, at a distance measurable in years of light, there is a ship moving. It carries a hunter who has hunted longer than most human civilizations have existed, who carries scars that each tell a story in a language only their kind can read, who is thinking, if thinking is the right word for the patient, unhurried attention that the code calls for, about where the next hunt will be and what the next worthy prey might look like. They may not be coming here. There are many worlds. There are many species. There is a great deal of galaxy that humanity has not seen, and the Yautja have. But if the ship that moves through the dark above us tonight is orienting toward this small, warm planet, with its cities lit up against the night, and its billions of lives going about their brief and urgent affairs, if the hunter in that ship is reviewing what its kind knows about this place, the ancient temples and the jungle encounters, and the city hunts and the marked survivors, and the handful of individuals who stood at the edge of the possible and chose to remain, then somewhere in that review is a notation that carries, in the closest available translation, a meaning, something like this: difficult, unpredictable, worth the effort. The stars are quiet tonight. The dark between them is very old and very deep, and full of things that are still watching. Rest now.